I'm not here to bore you on what we already know of Steph Curry's greatness. Forget his impressive NCAA tournament run where he willed his small college Davidson to the Elite Eight, or how his playstyle transcended the game, landing him multiple championships, back-to-back MVP honors, and earning the greatest shooter of all time label. That's all readily available info. I'm here to put you on Game of a Time where Golden State's most significant player in franchise history almost wasn't even a Warrior, cast aside to a sidekick role. A massive risk, injury-prone dude who teams would be foolish to build their franchise around. Let's meet those versions of Steph Curry in the Prism. Steph could have landed in several places. He was one of the headline prospects in the 2009 draft class filled with talent. Oklahoma forward Blake Griffin was top dog, but experts were torn on how the rest of the picks would fall. Some mock drafts had the babyface sharpshooter going as high as 4th overall, but most projections expected him to slide to the New York Knicks at the 8th spot. On paper, the selection made a ton of sense. Linking Curry's fast-paced playstyle with Knicks head coach Mike D'Antoni's innovative offense would have been the perfect coupling. D'Antoni licked his chops at the thought of drafting Steph. Regarding transitioning to the NBA, Steph also envisioned the Big Apple as the ideal place to launch his career. They openly flirted with each other, but come draft time, that ain't how things went down. Warriors brass had their eyes set on Steph, snagging him just a pick ahead of the Knicks, but selecting Steph seemed weird for a few reasons. Internally, Golden State went against Steph's dad and former NBA hooper Dale Curry's wishes when he straight up told the Bay Area squad not to draft his son. Steph didn't even view the Warriors as a viable option. It wouldn't be wise for an organization to base its decisions solely on the thoughts of a player's parents, but the Warriors drafting Steph left some experts befuddled simply based on fit. Golden State already had a franchise guard in Monte Ellis who mirrored Steph both in size and playstyle. This may have made sense as to why they immediately tried to shop Steph in a trade package to land Amar'e Stoudemire. They later backtracked, with Warriors head coach Don Nelson picturing an elite backcourt where Steph handled point guard duties, allowing Monte to remain a potent scorer. Nelly had yet to run the idea by Ellis, who spent the offseason working on his PG skills, but figured Ellis would be pleased to have a quality running mate. Except Ellis wasn't having it. During a media day training session before training camp began, Ellis firmly told reporters he couldn't see a world in which a backcourt with him and Steph could be successful. When pushed by reporters for a reason behind his thoughts, Ellis refused to offer any real analysis, simply saying they couldn't do it. I've heard the warmest way to welcome a teammate is completely telling them off before even spending a full week of practice together. So they were off to a strong start. Throughout the season, Ellis' statements kind of rang true. On the floor, a clear pecking order started to emerge, with Monte being the leader of the squad. At times, Ellis played so well that journalists didn't even acknowledge Steph as a sidekick. It was a one-man show. Steph ultimately did flash his potential at times with Ellis sidelined because of injury, but when Ellis returned to the lineup, Steph knew his place. Media members believed the two couldn't coexist on the floor, were too undersized, and things visibly looked out of whack between them. Despite Steph finishing second place in Rookie of the Year voting, Golden State found themselves in the draft lottery, which further clouded his future yet again as they hit the offseason. With University of Kentucky's star point guard John Wall set to hit the upcoming draft, media members speculated if Golden State should strike while the iron was hot and deal Curry. The ping pong balls didn't fall in Golden State's favor as they landed the 6th pick, eventually drafting big man Ekpe Udoh. Either way, after a full season of nearly confirming Ellis' beliefs, many experts were convinced the Warriors had to do something, which didn't happen on the player personnel side. Nelson resigned, and as new head coach Keith Smart fully took over, Curry saw his role diminish even more, being sent to the bench in high-pressure situations. Ellis still reigned supreme as the team's leader, but as Steph's sophomore season came to an end, he had much bigger problems on his hands. Technically speaking, his feet. Steph wasn't an injury-prone guy. He only missed a single game in his 3 collegiate seasons, but was forced to sit out 8 games due to ankle sprains during his second year in the Bay. The issue appeared more serious when reports circulated that he had to undergo surgery in the offseason. The operation appeared to be a success, but seemingly wasn't the case as Steph rode the pine for 40 games in the following lockout-shortened 2012 season. The frequency at which Steph kept hurting his ankles was extremely concerning. Less than a month into the campaign, the dude had already sprained his ankles on 3 separate occasions. Steph couldn't hide his emotions, tossing his mouth guard or shielding his face in his jersey with each rolled ankle. In search of some sort of answer, Steph visited Nike headquarters during the season to have his shoes analyzed for fit, learning that his ankle naturally rolled to the outside. Maybe it was the kicks all along, or just maybe his ankle was truly screwed when he had to be shut down for the remainder of the year after attempting to make a comeback. Golden State wouldn't publicly admit it, but they figured it was the latter as well. With Steph out, the Warriors front office reportedly tried to include their down bad guard in a trade package to acquire Milwaukee Bucks center Andrew Bogut. The deal ultimately got nixed because Milwaukee viewed Steph as damaged goods. Instead, Golden State shipped off Monte Ellis in a trade that appeared to rattle fans. A week later, during a game that was meant to honor Golden State icon Chris Mullin, Warriors fans rained down boos on co-owner Joe Lacob to the point where the dude could barely speak.
Tonight, now that we got that over with, tonight,
Golden State supporters were fed up with the direction of their team, but the trade indicated the franchise was ready to turn the keys over to Steph when he came back healthy, which by season's end seemed to be a bigger if than expected. A day before the final game of the year, Steph underwent a second surgery on his right ankle. Steph vowed he would do everything possible to avoid repeating going under the knife, but after multiple consultations, he had no other options. Even scarier, as Steph hit the operation table, doctors initially didn't know how severe the surgery would be. The worst case scenario surgery required Steph to get total reconstruction, essentially meaning a complete redo of his first operation, but this time with tendons from a dead dude. However, a procedure of that nature wouldn't guarantee how the ghost ankle would hold up on the floor. Luckily, a set of x-rays found no structural damage to the ligaments, and Steph could go under the least intrusive option in his eyes. An operation was still needed, but it allowed for a much quicker recovery time. While a less invasive surgery presented promising news, it didn't fully calm Warriors management. Steph had Looney Tune-ass types of injuries where he often got hurt without anyone around him. On one instance, he rolled his ankle during a preseason game by jumping into a passing lane. In another situation, he dribbled up court in a matchup against the Spurs with hardly anyone near him before his right ankle gave out underneath him as if he slipped on an invisible banana peel. Whispers circulated the league that Steph had glass ankles. His own GM, Bob Myers, admitted to never seeing anything like it before. A bum ankle is one thing, but with Steph's rookie contract set to expire the following season, his future with Golden State became much more complicated. Both sides engaged in early negotiations with talks starting at nearly $9 million per year. Then a major offseason domino fell. Major for Steph and Golden State's sake at least. The Denver Nuggets extended fellow 09 draftee Ty Lawson to a 4-year, $48 million deal. Steph and Ty both ran the point for their respective teams, but the major difference between the two lay in their responsibilities. For Denver, Ty was a piece of a puzzle that made the Nuggets more whole. For Golden State, especially now with Monte gone, Steph was the puzzle. The following day after Lawson got his bread, Golden State dropped Steph his bag, but his price point said it all. With a vast difference in their expected roles, Steph should have cleared Lawson's figure by a large margin. And while Steph was pleased to finally have a secure future with the Warriors, he understood the lower tag in his eyes came at the expense of Golden State looking out for themselves. Journalists, on the other hand, saw the deal in a much different light. They believed the Warriors giving an injury-prone guard an extension before his deal was up, especially at that price, was a huge risk. Maybe under market value, but anything near the max seemed absurd. The contract not only signified Golden State entrusting their franchise to Steph, but it presented a turning point in his career. Would he ever turn into the true sharpshooter that the league envisioned, able to sauce defenders with spectacular lateral quickness? Or would he go down as an overpriced guy, leaving fans with the image of him in pain, wondering what could have been? We all know how that turned out, but the quickness with which it happened was remarkable. That very season, Steph played a reassuring 78 games with a superb breakout year. 2 seasons later, he was an NBA champion and MVP of the league. Journalists marveled at his transformation from a hooper with shattered ankles to one of the NBA's best players, all within the same contract window that was viewed as a massive gamble. The ankle surgery wasn't some miracle cure. Steph worked hard to get to that point. He teamed up with trainers gaining knowledge on the importance of his body, learning to get shifty with power from his hips, relieving the pressure on his ankles. Steph played hesitant at first, not fully trusting in the movements he'd often attempted in the past, but after a while, he grew comfortable and gained the confidence to barrel into driving lanes and finish at the cup against much larger defenders. Steph had his scares, but at each turn shook him off and seemed to come back more lethal. It was a long journey, and if you had asked Steph 2 months after his second surgery, he thought he would never play again. It's easy to get lost in his long-range threes and see him make defenders touch earth with killer crossovers on a nightly basis, but that wasn't who Steph was always destined to be. He could have just as easily been a sidekick, almost shipped off to another squad, or even worse, robbed of his career completely because of injuries. But those all just seem like distant memories in the rearview mirror of the greatest shooter of all time. Thanks for watching this episode of Prism. That Steph Curry guy sure is good at ball, huh? Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, we have plenty of more stuff to check out here on YouTube, but if you really love us, head over to our Patreon. There we have a number of things from exclusive content, early releases, our podcast The Annex, and so much more. I might be a little biased, but trust your boy, you won't be disappointed by signing up.